All right, thanks, Kelsey, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm excited to be with you this evening to visit about your swine projects. And I guess to start things off with, I would assume that many of you were kind of been through some of the pig buying season. There's still certainly some more sales for county fair pigs coming up. If you would humor me, if in the chat section, why don't you type in what types of pigs that you've already purchased that you're going to show this year. So what breeds have you guys, some of you have purchased already? I'd like to get a feel for what you've done. So if you want to just type in the chat that information, that'd be good. We'll try and keep it a little interactive here. There we go. Looks like some Durocs and Spots and Berks. Very good. Yeah, so it's fun to kind of get the different breeds and kinds, and yeah, some Hereford breeding gilt market, excellent. Some more Durocs, Yorks, crosses. Yeah, we kind of get in the whole gamut. And you know, this is a project. I grew up originally I'm from South Dakota and grew up on a swine operation that we also had lambs and raised sheep and cattle as well. And so I see somebody put a Chester. My family, growing up, we had about 120 Chester white sows. And so I'm glad that there's a family there that put the Chester in. So yeah, this will be good. And as Kelsey said, if you have questions, please just note those. We can answer them at the end. Please put them in the chat and we'll get them addressed. And really what I'd like to do on the next few minutes with you is talk about the nutrition of your pigs. So really over the last few weeks, you've been probably getting your pigs or will the next couple weeks. I know there's some more sales coming up, or if you purchase some from somebody or maybe even raised them yourself. And for those that did that, I really commend you for raising your own projects. And what I would like to do is just talk about getting them off to the right start and talking about some nutrition aspects that become important. So for the parents that are listening with, you can help me out too. And I know this is kind of an education. It's for both the youth and the parents as we talk about the feed, because feed is so important, just like water. Those are the two things those pigs need every day to grow and be healthy. And so we're going to talk about feed a little bit. So the one thing I wanted to, this is a little outline for today. We're going to talk about how to read a feed tag. So every bag of feed that you buy, whether it's pig, sheep, cattle, even all species, there's a feed tag. I want to talk about what's on it and then how to read that to make sure that we're getting the right feed for our pigs. I also then want to talk about the makeups of the diet, because this is how people often choose what type of feed based on what the pig may look like. So I want to talk about protein, fat, fiber, what they really mean and what they could do for our pigs. I want to talk about a little bit about just putting the pigs on a full feeder, put them on a self feeder and then they can just eat full they want, or some people will hand feed as well. And then one of the most important things is understanding where we're at with weighing. And let me get my little laser pointer, and weighing and having a plan to manage their weight to make sure that we don't have our pigs too big or too small. And again, I'm going to kind of target the county fair pigs in this particular talk. So the first thing I want to do is talk about a feed tag. And so this tag would be stitched onto every bag of pig feed that you would buy. That's whether it's a show feed or whether it's just a feed from your co-op or feed store that they make. There's always going to be a feed tag. And this is basically just like if you go to the grocery store and look at the nutritional label, a feed tag is just this. And if you're ever looking for a really good project talk, a talk on a feed tag really is great, because it really encompasses all species. And you don't even have to make it pig specific. It's just more of a livestock specific. So a little tidbit there if you're looking for a project talk for your county or even for a competition at your county level. So what it will have on here is the weight, the quantity. So most bags are 50 pounds. It's going to have its name. So this is the Show Pig Grower Deluxe. Okay. And then it's going to have the guaranteed analysis. So this is the nutritional guarantees, just like if you went and if you have some, if you're snacking on something, you have food next to you in some label, this is the same type of information that's going to be on our human food, that's on all of our livestock feed as well. And so here we'll talk about protein. Lysine is an amino acid that makes up protein. Lysine is one of those amino acids that we talk about in pigs. It's really important to make the muscle and body tissue. It's just one of the pieces of the puzzle that helps form that. We talk about fat, fiber, then minerals. There could be vitamins listed. So really it's all the things we want to see what's in that diet. Then it has ingredients. So this is what actually makes up the feed that you're feeding to that animal. So in this case, it lists corn, soybean meal. This is kind of a nursery diet. So we actually have fish meal, dried whey, kind of a milk product. Choice white grease is pig fat. And then we have all these vitamins and minerals. So basically, it's like if you take a multivitamin for you kids, if you take like a Flintstones vitamin every day or every few days, that's exactly what we put in these pig diets as well. We include all the vitamins and minerals those pigs need to grow and to perform well. So the way to think about it is pigs get a Flintstone vitamin every day. And that's very true because we include all those directly into the feed. Then it says directions for use. So again, it's free choice. Pigs could grow in this particular diet, could eat this feed from 40 to 150 pounds. It says don't feed to adult pigs because maybe this particular feed isn't formulated for reproductive sows. So it could not, you could short them in different nutrients. And then who made it? So Willie Wildcat Feeds made it. So we know it has to be a good feed if Willie's in the feed business. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about some of the labels on the diets, okay? So, and I don't want to talk over anybody, and I want to keep it so it's really basic, but a few of these next slides are so important, whether you're a youth or whether you're one of the parents helping select the different feeds with the youth. And so it becomes important to know if we're feeding the right feed. And the first one is diet crude protein. Crude protein is basically the muscle components of our body. So it's made of nitrogen, but what that is, it's so all of our body tissues, if you reach out and grab your arm, okay, you feel the muscle in your arm, that's made of protein, okay? So what we're talking about is the level of protein in the feed that the animal eats that then can make the body tissue, the meat in the body itself, okay? And so what we really want to do is feed a crude protein level that meets the needs of what we call amino acids. So if the way to think about it is protein is like a puzzle that you would put together. When it's all done, that's all the components of protein. But all the individual puzzle pieces are different amino acids. And what these amino acids do is we feed them, the pig digests them, and then they form them in that puzzle to make muscle, okay? And so again, that's what these amino acids are. They make up the overall protein. So pigs necessarily don't have a crude protein, and we're going to call crude protein CP in this presentation. But it's really for all those individual puzzle pieces that come together that help form our body tissue. And so again, what I look for in a show feed or any feed diet for pigs would be what is the lysine level. We use the lysine level as one of those amino acids that we help kind of understand is there enough in the diet to make that pig grow and perform its best. So I want to refer to oftentimes when we're buying or if somebody tells you, hey, you need to feed that pig a 20% protein, that's very common what people may reference the protein level. But what I want to do is get you introduced to what the lysine level or the actual amino acid, because that actually means more than the protein level. So oftentimes we're going to feed a higher lysine, higher crude protein diet to pigs that are smaller. And as they get older, we actually need to feed less protein and we feed less amino acids such as lysine. And that's because they eat more every day. So since they're eating more every day, we don't need to have it as concentrated in the feed itself. So again, these are some general guidelines in helping buy pig feed. And so right now, if you have some smaller pigs, 25 to 50 pounds, oftentimes they're fed about a 20 or 21% protein diet. Now, if you have pigs that are 70 to 80 pounds, an 18% protein or a 1 to a 1.1 lysine diet, it will make those pigs grow just fine. So again, what I want to do now is, so let's say you give some scenarios to help you make your pig look better. Okay, so I want to do that for a couple of slides here. Let's say you get to the middle of summer and you think your pig is gaining good. It's ideal in how much muscle it has. It's walking really good on its feet and legs. Well, what kind of diet should I actually feed this pig? Okay, so what we want to do then is go back to the slide I just had in terms of we want to feed a protein level and a lysine level for that weight range of pig. So oftentimes in this up to 150 pounds, it'd be that 18% type of diet. And then after 150 pounds, we can feed it that lower protein or the lower amino acid diet, and it's going to cruise right into county fair and look really good for you. Now, let's say you get to the middle of May or a month and a half, and this really nice pig that you bought starts to look like it's not very thick anymore. So it's growing, but we don't think it has enough muscle. Or the other side is it's starting to get fat already. So it's starting to get a big neck, its belly's really big, and we just don't think it has much muscle. It's actually getting fat. So what we want to do in that case is we actually want to feed a little bit higher protein or higher amino acids, and that'll help that pig make sure that we're getting as much muscle that it has the ability to put on. But it also helps burn fat a little bit or prevents excess fat. So for the parents that are listening, you probably know the Atkins diet. The Atkins diet's a high protein diet that we keep low in carbs. Think of this type of approach as an Atkins diet where we're going to burn fat off and make sure we have as much muscle in the body as we can. And so again, so instead of moving to a 16% crude protein diet, we may want to keep it on 18 or even 20% if it's really starting to get fat and it's lighter muscle. Now the opposite side, let's say we get to May 1st or May 15th, so we're a little ways down the road, and you get behind the pig and man, it is way too heavy muscle. It's really round, really shapely, and then its legs, because it's so heavy muscled, that it's not moving very well. And so what we want to do in that case is we want to actually drop the protein level, or we want to feed it less protein, less amino acids, because we don't want it to have so much muscle shape. And so again, in that case, instead of an 18% type of protein diet, maybe in a month when the pig is still under 150 pounds, you want to go ahead and move it ahead to the 16% diet so it doesn't have as much protein. So we're not maximizing the muscle. And so we'll actually bring it back to actually have that pig look better when it doesn't have so much muscle it's just way too thick, way too round muscle, and not just a nice muscle shape that we would really like to have for a show pig. Okay. So the other thing, if you are working with a breeder, if you're working with your co-op or feed supplier to get some feed, somebody may say if your pig really is heavy muscle, they say you need to put it on sow feed. Okay. Well, what in the world are they talking about if they say put it on sow feed? And the problem is sow feed can mean a lot of different things because there's different protein levels. If you look down here, there's a lot of different protein levels or amino acid levels of different sow feeds. Most likely what they're trying to tell you is they want that pig fed a gestation diet or a diet that we feed to sows that are pregnant, because that's a low lysine, low crude protein diet that oftentimes then will help that pig lose some muscle and then thus make it look better in case it was too thick and the legs are starting to get really bad because it's like a bodybuilder pig. Okay, while we want a lot of muscle, we don't want a bodybuilding looking pig in the show ring just because it looks so unbalanced and unproportional, just like a really big heavyweight weightlifter does. You know, their course of how their body is. Here we want a smooth looking pig, and that's kind of what we want to do. So again, you can spend some time, if you have questions on this, we can address them a little later in the session as well. So a question is, how can you change the crude protein level of the diet? Okay, so one of the couple ways is simply you change the feed that you buy. Most feed suppliers are going to have different crude protein levels of different diets. And so then you simply just buy a different crude protein feed. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. Now let's say though that you're just mixing your own feed, or your co-op has, you're buying a 16%, but now you think you need an 18%, so you want to feed more. Well, we can simply purchase show supplements that are sold by show feed companies, or we can simply mix in more soybean meal. Soybean meal is a protein product that's already in every swine diet that you will ever feed. Soybean meal is in, it's hard to ever find a pig diet in the US that does not have soybean meal in it. It's a good soy protein. And in fact, it's about 50% protein in the raw form when you buy soybean meal itself. So one of the ways that you can increase the protein level of a diet is simply add more soybean meal. Almost every feed store is going to have a bag of soybean meal that you can simply purchase and mix that with your existing feed that you've already bought, or if you're already buying. And that's one of the simple ways to do it. And here is what we can do is, if we had a 20-pound pail of complete feed, all we got to do is add in a half a pound of soybean meal in this 20 pounds. And if we had a 16% diet, now it's 17%. And the reason is because, again, soybean meal is very high protein. So even if we add a little bit in, it increases that whole diet, and you still have a balanced diet. A 50-pound bag of soybean meal, right now it's $14 to $16, maybe $17 a bag for 50 pounds. And that 50-pound bag will go a long way in getting you through the course of the year, depending how many pigs you have. Now I'm going to shift gears to crude fat. And fat is something that's in, again, there'd be a certain fat level in every diet we feed. For those that even have your pets, your dog or cat, when this is done, don't do it now, but go look at your dog food label. It's going to have protein, it's going to have fat level, just like you do in any of your livestock. And oftentimes what we want to do is look at the fat level, because that indicates maybe how much energy that pig is getting, and maybe how fast it's going to grow, or how much body condition it's going to put on. So if we have a pig that's getting way too fat, if the fat level of the feed is really high, well, that's maybe a reason. Or if we have a very low fat feed and the pig is still really skinny, we need to figure out how to get more fat into that pig's diet to give it better body condition, to make it look better. Okay. The one thing I want you to recognize, that most feeds, if you don't add any additional fat, it's about 3.5% fat, and that comes from corn and soybean meal that they contribute directly. So if you have a diet that says it's 5% fat on the feed tag, generally they're adding about a 1.5% additional liquid fat to this corn and soybean meal normal diet. Okay. So again, there's different types of fat that are added already to your pig feed. Choice white grease is pork fat. Tallow is beef fat. But oftentimes we're going to see soybean oil, corn oil. You may see canola oil. Those are just good vegetable oils that can be used. What we do not use in a pig diet, we do not want to use peanut oil or olive oil. Those are not very palatable. And honestly, those will change the flavor of the pig fat. And then when you cook it, it'll actually carry some of those flavors as well. So we want to avoid those. So how do you add fat? So if you're at home and you have a fat, you decide you have some feed already you purchased and it's low in fat, how do you actually add more fat to the pig's diet and still have a balanced ration? Well, again, show feed companies do sell fat additive products where you can buy them in buckets, bags, jugs, whatever. Okay. They're sold in dry and liquid forms, and they're good, high quality products. The other way to simply do it, and it's the way my family does it, we simply buy just either jugs, or at Sam's Club, they sell like 4 gallons of the frying oil. We'll simply buy liquid fat and have that. And for pigs that need it, we'll simply mix some of that directly in. And that's a very economical approach to do it. So how do we add fat in and be economical? So think about it, fat is fat, it's 100%. So when you have that jug of corn oil and you put some into the feed, every 1% of weight that you add increases the diet fat of that diet by 1%. So again, if you go back, if you fill a 5-gallon pail has 20 pounds of feed, even adding just 0.2 pounds of fat, you're going to move the percent of 5% feed to 6%. So again, it's just simply a way to add more fat. Also, I really like liquid fat because it helps texturize the diet. For anybody that has sheep or cattle and you feed a diet that has some texture in it, some like molasses, and the cattle or sheep or goats really like to eat it. Pigs are the same way. When you soften it with a little bit of liquid fat, it seems like they like to eat a little bit more of it. Okay. Fiber. Fiber is bulk. So this would be eating like lettuce, right? For humans, or any greens are going to have fiber in them. And that's why, again, fiber is a good, healthy component of a diet. But also in pigs, what we can use it for is, again, if you have a pig that has a really flat rib or a flat belly and you want it to give a better appearance, oftentimes we can feed a little bit more fiber, and it simply helps fill the belly of that pig more and helps expand it so they look better. Again, there's different ways of doing that, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but beet pulp can be used. But pigs don't like the taste of beet pulp very well. It's really dry and hard. So if you do it, you can actually wet it. A lot of cattle people will feed wet beet pulp. Do the same. You can soak it in some water for a little bit, put it on the feed, and then it tastes a little bit better for the pigs. You can use whole oats, wheat bran or wheat midds, soy hulls. Those are all high fiber products. But one thing that some people try and use is what's called oat groats. Oat groats are like a flake, but they're really high quality. They don't contain much fiber, and actually they'll gain faster and really they won't accomplish that purpose. So when using oats, be careful that you choose the right type of oat to add fiber. And again, we can talk more about that later if needed. So there's different ways. If you just have a couple pigs, you can simply mix those different ingredients, in a bucket. If you have lots of pigs or more, you can use like a cement mixer where you put the feed in, then turn it on, and you can put the fiber, you can put the fat, put the soybean meal. And it's a really simple way to really get a nice mix of the diet. So if you have a cement mixer around, you can use this again for any of your species. It's the way our family does it to mix pig feed when we have more in the barn than just what we want to do with just mixing in a couple buckets by hand. Transitioning between feeds. So if you're going to completely change the type of feed, again, this would be very similar for all livestock species. We generally like to do it over a 4 to 5 day process, so we don't change the taste of that feed so fast that they don't want to eat it and you throw them off feed. Again, oftentimes it's less of an issue if you're using the same brand of feed, but if you're going to switch from one brand to the other, make sure that you're mixing those feeds together for a few days before you just completely change to the new brand. Okay. So feed storage. This is one for all of you online. So again, I know I've been talking about a lot of different things, but so if you've kind of not paying attention, this is what I want to bring you back to, is how to store your feed. This is one of the most overlooked areas. And honestly, this is where a lot of families get themselves in a little bit of trouble, is that they buy too much feed at once, and then it stores at your farm or your barn or your acreage, whatever you have, too long, and that feed goes stale. Okay. So again, if you think about a pig, and we'll get to how many bags of feed, it's going to eat. You don't need to buy 5 bags of feed for a single pig today. It's going to take a long time for that individual pig to eat 5 bags of feed. So again, we want to be practical. You don't want to run to the feed store every week. You're going to spend more in gas than in feed. But what I recommend doing is, having enough feed at one time if you purchase it for no more than 1 month at a time. And then we need to store that feed in a place that is going to be cool and dry. Okay. We do not want this feed to be in any sunlight whatsoever. We do not want to store this in like a container or a box that's out in the sun. And when you open it, it's like 130 degrees inside that box. That feed is just cooking and it's decreasing its quality. So we got to store it in a good place that it's just not in direct sunlight and it's not going to get excessively hot. So one question is, how much feed will your pigs eat? Okay, so if you have a 50-pound pig, and that's pretty typical this time of year, there's probably a lot of 40 to 80-pound pigs. They're certainly heavier and certainly lighter, but they're going to eat 3 to 5 pounds a day for a 50 to 100-pound pig. And then again, as they get bigger, they're going to eat more. And in fact, some of these pigs that get to 275, 290 pounds, they're probably going to eat more than 8 pounds a day if you let them. Okay, so if we assume how much feed does a pig eat, A pig is going to put on 1 pound of feed of body weight for every 3 pounds of feed that it eats. Okay, so a pig eats 3 pounds of feed, it's going to gain 1 pound from that feed. Okay, so again, if we do the math over this period of time, you're going to feed each pig somewhere between 13 and 14 bags of feed per pig over the course of a county fair from right now. Okay, so that just kind of gives you an idea of how much feed each pig is going to eat. All right, so I want to move now to how we feed our pigs. Okay, and this may seem a little elementary or silly to some of you, but we have to really think about how we present that feed. Now, most pigs are going to go on just a feeder, and there's lots of different feeder types out there, and they're all most of them are good quality. But what we want to make sure that we have feed in here that's still fresh. So the one thing is when we have feed, we just assume all the pigs are eating. But what we don't know, let's say we had 2 or 3 pigs in this pen and they're consuming feed from this feeder. What we don't know is how much does each pig individually eat over a day or over even a week, a period of time. So that's where we have to look at the pigs. Are they up at the feeder? Or if we have a sick one, it may be laying in back, even though the feeder is going down because 2 other pigs are just healthy, they're eating a lot. One of the pigs may not be eating very much. So we got to be observant when we do this. And that's a disadvantage because we don't know, is every pig eating enough? All right, or is our pig sick? The other thing is what we don't want to do is just, if we had just 1 pig as example, we have this big feeder. We don't want to dump 2 bags of feed in that feeder, okay? Because it's going to take them probably 3 weeks, a month, and when they're small to eat, 100 pounds out. So again, that feed's going to get stale. If it's associated with the environment, it's going to, that pig's not going to like the taste of it. Sitting in that feeder on hot days, we have a lot of weather and humidity. So again, I recommend you don't put enough feed. You only put enough feed out to feed 5 and 7 days at the absolute most. Okay. These feeders, they have to be out of direct sunlight. So if you have your pigs outside, I recommend getting a board, a plywood sheet, something that still goes over the top, because we have to protect it, that we're not getting rainwater in it, because we get water in that feeder, it's going to clog up and mold. Plus, we want to make sure that the sun does not beat right down on these feeders. So if your pigs are inside, it's no big deal. But if they're outside, make sure the sun is not on direct sunlight on these feeders. That also goes the same for waters. You cannot have direct sunlight on these waters because that water heats up so much the pigs may not want to drink it very well. Okay, so the one thing I want to talk about is feeder adjustment. So if you have a feeder, and again, this one has multiple feeding spaces. And if you have a nursery feeder, and a lot of people will have a nursery feeder like this for the pigs this time of year, and then they may move to like the feeder I just showed, a bigger feeder. What you only want is about 50% of the bottom of the pan to show feed. What I see way too much is that all of a sudden this feeder is just full of feed. And honestly, the pigs aren't eating it, okay? They're generally only eating out of one of these and getting the fresh feed, because the rest of this is old and nasty and moldy, okay? So if you have a feeder like this, or even a single one on this previous slide, move the adjustment down to make sure that the pigs are only having about that much feed in the feeder, and they'll go up and they'll eat. You're not going to limit their feed, and you're going to keep it fresh in the pan, okay? Hand feeding is the opposite of putting them on just on a feeder. This is where you're providing feed daily through a scoop or a cup or something. And then you know how much the pigs are eating, and then you know that they're all eating. So if you have multiple pens, or you can even do this obviously within having 2 or 3 or how many of your pigs you have in the same pen, when you put the feed out yourself, you'll know, do they all come up and eat? And you may have enough room that they all have enough room to eat feed and not fighting and in competition. Okay, so again, this is just, it's more labor intense. Sometimes you have to have multiple pens and all that, but again, different ways of doing it, but also just making sure that you can handle whatever the labor situation is feeding if you do this. The one thing you got to know is the weight of your pigs. And again, I'm fully aware that the vast majority of you may not have a scale at home. Now, if you do, you can use it for multiple livestock species. In fact, like even this time of year, if you have smaller pigs, and for all the moms on here, sorry, I'm going to suggest this. The reality is you can weigh yourself Now do this in the barn, not in your bathroom, in your house, but you can take a regular scale or you can buy a regular scale that goes up in weight. You can stand on the scale, look down at what the weight is, grab your animal, weigh it, and then you can know its weight is by difference. And you can do that with sheep, goats, and pigs up to a point, okay? But again, it's a real practical way and it's an inexpensive way of getting weights, again, while they're still younger. The one way on pigs, though, that's really interesting if you don't have any sort of scale is you can actually take clothing tape, okay? And you can measure it around the girth, and the girth is around the front, right behind the front legs on the ribs, and go up over the top of the pig and measure how long that distance is all the way around the pig. And in fact, it'll get you within about 10 pounds of the actual weight of the pig. And so at the end of this, I know Kelsey's going to provide you with our junior swine guide. Our K-State program has developed a junior youth swine guide. In there is this estimate and also some directions of how to do that. And I would highly encourage you do that every few weeks to know how your pig is growing, because you got to know the weight of your pig. And that leads into this next question. So you're all purchasing pigs this time of year, and you got to make a decision. Did I purchase a pig that's too big? Did I purchase a pig that's too small for county fair? Or how are we going to do this to make sure that the pig's gaining and meets an end weight for our county fair? So what I have here is an example of, so let's say it's April 1st. We're pretty close to April 1st is Friday, okay? And let's say your county show is July 17th. Okay, and you want your pig to weigh 280 pounds at the county fair. Now, the reality is to qualify to be in the market show, most fairs are somewhere between 230 and 280, 290 pounds. So there's a pretty wide window. Again, many market animals show at 250, 260, 270. For this example, I'm just using the 280 pound target, okay? So on your own math, if you want to afterwards, and again, you're going to get all these slides, you can go through your own math to know when your county fair date is and maybe what your pig weighs now. So it's 15 weeks under this scenario, April 1st to July 17th, right around 15 weeks. Show pigs are going to gain somewhere between 10 to 14 pounds per week over the course of now until July 17th. Now, the reality is today they're going to be closer to maybe 7 to 10, okay? As they get over 100 pounds, they may be closer to the 2 pounds a day. But again, it takes them till they're a little bigger before they're going to perform at that level. What that means is they're going to gain somewhere between 150 and 210 pounds over 15 weeks, gaining 10 to 14 pounds a week. So they grow pretty fast. Now, let's say you weighed your pig this week and it weighs 70 pounds up to 130 pounds. That's a pretty wide window. That's 60 pound spread. But if you have a 70 pound pig that gains 14 pounds a week, it's going to weigh 280 pounds. Now, if you have a 130 pound pig and it just gains 10 pounds a week, guess what? It's going to weigh 280 pounds. So my point here is you could have a 60 pound difference in weight today and still be at the same endpoint depending on the growth rate of your pig, okay? And again, not many people probably have a 130 pound pig for your county fair yet. Some of you may. That's pretty big. But if it just grows at a moderate pace, you're going to be okay. So again, goes back, you have to know the weights of your pigs. You have to know how they're growing to know if you need to push them faster or if you need to restrict and hand feed to get them on a diet if they're going to be too big come your county fair target. Okay, so that's what I have. I've covered, I didn't want to get down too deep in some of the nutrition areas. But again, I want to get it introduced. We can talk about not only nutrition, but if there's anything the first few weeks of your pigs while you have them at home, if you want to talk any management, we can sure do that. But I guess at this point, we can open it up for questions that you have, or if Kelsey, if anything's come in the chat, we can talk about.
I don't see anything in the chat right now, Joel, but maybe we'll wait just a minute or two and see if we have a couple come through. And as we're doing that, just a reminder that this webinar will be available. It's recorded and it will be available for you to watch later in case you have some ideas or need refreshers on this. It'll be on the Kansas 4-H Animal Science Project page where you found the link to register for this evening. It looks like we did have one come through, Joel. Any tips to lower protein levels in the feed?
Yeah, so the one here, I mean, there's a couple ways. One, if you already have too much existing feed and you need to lower the protein levels, maybe what you're asking. Otherwise, we just simply purchase a lower protein feed. One of the ways that you can do that is you got to realize that it's all about dilution of soybean meal to a lower level. And the way we do that is through more corn. One of the ways that you can do that is in fact, just buy some ground or roll or cracked or rolled corn from your feed supplier and mix that in to your existing complete feed. So let's say you have a 16% feed and you want it to be lower. Corn is only about 7 to 8% protein, so it's much lower in protein. So again, by proportion, you can mix in, you know, about 5 to 10% of that diet, of that total weight of ground corn or rolled corn, and that'll decrease the protein level of that diet. And yet you're still going to be pretty balanced with your vitamins, minerals. It's not going to dilute all that out enough to cause any problems. But honestly, we just like to use just straight ground corn or rolled corn from our co-op, and we can lower a protein level with that. So, but what I don't recommend with that is that you do that all year long. What I recommend is trying to buy the right protein level of the feed to take care of that, rather than continually trying to blend it out, because over time you're blending the vitamins and minerals all lower, because corn basically has none of that it's going to contribute to a meaningful level. So you can do that short term for a couple weeks, but I recommend if you're for longer term, you're going to need to get a protein level of a feed that's lower to feed up what you have, because we don't want to waste. Feed's too expensive. We got to use what we have, but then just purchase a lower protein feed.
Thank you. And the next question is, we have a pig that is 25 pounds now. How do we get her to take off?
Yeah, so if you have a 25-pound pig now, again, depending on the age of it, you know, it still really needs to be almost on a starter type feed. So these are the feeds that are still going to have some, you know, they may have fish meal, they'll have some milk products, you know, so I'm not sure if you purchased that pig from somebody or if you raised it yourself. If you purchased it, you know, you still need to visit with the feed supplier to still try and get a nursery pig diet that isn't necessarily a grower diet. So oftentimes you might hear the word grower diet. A grower pig really is about 40 pounds and heavier. Otherwise, when we get below that, we still kind of work with nursery diets for nursery pigs. So that might be something, because what happens is with the 25-pound up to a 40-pound pig, if we get them on a grower diet, like an 18%, they're going to grow a lot slower because we don't have enough amino acids. We don't have enough energy, and it's kind of shorting them nutrition. So they're just going to grow at a slower pace. So that might be something that you need to work with whoever you purchased it from, if you did, to ask them what it was on. And then with your feed supplier, make sure you get the right diet. And what you can do there too is, again, we do this ourselves. So if we have pigs that are that small, we keep them on a nursery ration, but then as they get to 35 and 40 pounds, we may blend half of the nursery diet with half of the grower diet and kind of do those incrementally, because that's really what it is that pig grows. You kind of have that proportion of feed needs of it. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Great. And the next question is, what % of protein should I be feeding?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back. Maybe go back. Did your screen go blank, Kelsey?
Yes, it's black.
Yeah, so did mine on there. Why did it do that? All right. Let me see if I can get that pulled back up. Sorry, I think. Is it back?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So if we go back to this slide here, that gives very general guidelines. Okay. So again, I'm not saying that these are the perfect things to match your pigs to, but for a lot of you that are in this, you're probably a lot of county fair pigs right now are, 30, 40 pounds up to 80, 90 pounds. It would catch a lot of pigs right now. Somewhere in an 18 to 20% ration is probably where you need to start those pigs at to make sure that they're off to a good start. And again, once they get over, this is 50 pounds, but don't take it as absolute. You can keep pigs on this 20% higher than 50 for a little bit. Once they get to 60, 70 pounds and 18%, or again, I know I talk protein, but what's really important is these lysine levels on the feed tag. Those are the important ones to kind of help match up. So that'd be kind of my recommendation, trying to go off this slide based on body weight and lysine level and protein. Okay, so I'd use this, and again, we'll be sending this slide set out to everybody that's joined, so you can use this.
Okay, and it looks like our last question is, what is a feed that you would recommend from personal experience or heard of from someone else?
Yeah, so this, I would say that all of the show feed companies out there, so there's a lot of them, and they all have high quality feed. To say that one is better than the other, somebody would be honestly not telling the truth, because they're all formulated to meet the needs of those animals for those, and again, they're in the business to make sure all your 4-H pigs look their best. Okay, so whether that's Linders, Showtech, Sunglow, Show Right, there's a lot of brand name feeds out there that can be used. At the same time, there's a lot of local feed stores that make high quality feed as well. And so, again, regionally in Kansas, there's many different mills. It's really just working with, those feed companies, if they make their own, to understand what it's comparable to. But again, to say which is the best, I'm not here to potentially say one's better than the other. We've used various ones over time. Honestly, we have a formula that my family uses. We get made at a co-op, and it's the floor stock product that a lot of co-ops in our area that stack with Countryside Feeds and Egg Partners. But that doesn't mean that it's any better than anybody else's, because they're all formulated to maximize the look of your pigs. And in fact, that's why they're in the business, and that's why they have customer service people to help your families if you're using any of their products, to make sure that those products are successful that's being fed.
Okay, and I think that's our last question for the evening. So once again, we'd like to thank Dr. Joel DeRucci for joining us this evening and sharing his knowledge with us. We're going to wrap this up, but as a reminder, I will email the slides as well as the Junior Swine Manual that has been developed. Those are also available online, but those will be emailed to every email address that registered for tonight's webinar. Join us again next week, the 4th Monday of April, and we will announce the topic for next month's discussion soon, and be watching for that on the Kansas 4-H Animal Science page, as well as the Kansas 4-H Animal Science website. And we will see you soon.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for joining. And one last thing I'll leave you with is, if you ever have questions, visit with your county extension agent or the breeders that you got your pigs from. They are always wanting to help you, and please pick up the phone. And if you need any help in extension, we're here, as well as the breeders that you got your pigs from. They want to help you as well. So I just encourage those two things.
Awesome. Thanks again.